Okay, so hello, good evening, everyone. It's now 6 p.m. Welcome to another episode of AtoAni Learn series, where we share to you some valuable insights about different sustainability topics that are relevant nowadays, such as the topic about sustainable communities, which is what we will be discussing with our panelists for today. So, tonight, we will be joined by our panelists from Audeo and AECOM, whom we will get to know more later. And so, to everyone who is watching right now, whether you are new to the series or have watched the previous webinars, stay tuned and do put in the comments section where you're watching. And you can also share this live stream to your respective social media accounts to have more people learn from this discussion. So this is episode 4 of AtoAni Learn series, where we will discuss redesigning sustainable communities under the new normal. I will be your moderator for today. I'm Volvi, and my line of work is in strategy, digitalization, and innovation, but I do volunteer during my free time, and I'm also passionate about sustainability, which I express through the social ventures AtoAni and AtoAni BioPack. So, same as everyone here, I'm really excited to learn more about this topic from our guest panelists to shed more light about this. Now, to kick off the discussion, for those of you who might have come here because you really want to learn more about this topic, or you have just been invited by one of your friends who is passionate about this topic, I know you're probably wondering, why are we discussing about sustainable communities right now when in fact there are a lot of topics we can talk about, like the current pandemic, but there are a lot of discussions already about COVID-19 as well as resources which you can research in the internet to know more about it. But in terms of sustainable communities and other sustainability topics, it doesn't receive that much attention yet. And it is also one of the most pressing problems that our planet is facing right now. Now, to give you an idea, let me share a few statistics. So I've captured these numbers yesterday from one of my favorite websites since this series started. This website is called The World Counts, which provides real-time data about the most pressing issues that the world is facing. So we've shown you some alarming numbers during the last webinar about the issue on plastic waste and how it harms the environment. Now, for this episode about sustainable communities, we want to share you some statistics about how our planet is affected by all the unsustainable actions that people are doing. So if you look at these numbers, as of yesterday, for this year alone, we need 1.76 planet Earths to be able to survive. Right? And hence, this planet is not enough for us. This is because more than 17 million hectares of forest are cut down or burned just in 2020, because these numbers are 2020, which was probably used for building homes, furniture, pulp to create paper and packaging. And if we continue doing what we are doing right now, we need 2,942 years to end this pollution. So just imagine this number of years it takes for us to actually bring back planet Earth to its original form. So that is why we organize a discussion around this topic, particularly on how we can build communities without harming the environment and making it sustainable. Now, our panelists for today will share some practical insights about this topic and more. I'm excited to ask them some questions and ask your questions as well. So please do put in the comment section, type your comments as well. And we would also love if you can share some likes and heart reacts in your Facebook live stream. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panelists for today, who are also sustainability advocates working on the housing and infrastructure industry. So they will be introducing themselves to us one by one. Let's start with Dani. She is the founder and president of Audeo, who is working on building system made of upcycled plastic. So Dani, kindly turn on your video and mic, please, and tell us more of what you do.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Well, thanks again, Wilby, for having me here. Super thankful to have this opportunity. So a little bit about myself. Again, I'm the founder and president of a company called Audeo. A little bit about my background. I'm actually originally from California. So I'm from the States, and my background is originally in public health. So I worked a lot with underserved communities, implementing policies and programs where we focus a lot on prevention of communicable diseases. So for example, diabetes, heart disease, certain cancers. So things like that. But I've pretty much for my entire life, I've been very passionate about environmental health itself and waste management systems. So kind of like fast forwarding it, I actually moved to the Philippines a little more than a year ago to start my company Audeo. And what we're doing with Audeo is we're introducing a Lego-like construction system composed of 90% upcycled plastic. So the goal of this is to really revolutionize the affordable housing industry here in the Philippines, while at the same time, pretty much reducing the plastic footprint. And of course, we're kind of going to go a little bit more, but in a nutshell, that's pretty much about me. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Danny. And I'm sure you're excited to know more about Audeo and also know more about how it can help build sustainable communities. All right, so now, next, would like to call on Laurence. He is a civil engineer who is also working on the area of business development at AECOM Philippines, which is a multinational infrastructure professional services company. So Laurence, kindly turn on your video and mic, please, and tell us more about you and what you do.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Wilby, for that. My name is Laurence. Just a little background about myself. I'm a civil engineer. I'm currently working under business development for AECOM Philippines, which, if you may not be familiar with AECOM, we're basically a multinational engineering consultancy firm based in 170 countries across the world. And here in the Philippines, I'm currently running in the business development and growing the business here as a civil engineer and constantly looking for new opportunities for growth for that company. In AECOM as well, I'm currently involved as well in project coordination for the subway project, the upcoming Metro Manila subway project. And also currently looking over the energy business line for the Philippines, specifically on LNG power projects here in the Philippines. On the side though, and this is where my sustainability report comes from, I've actually studied or created a thesis revolving around the manufacturing of plastic Lego bricks based on Audeo's technology. Back then, it wasn't really based from Audeo, but rather from Conceptos Plastizos, which is based in Colombia. And we've kind of created a thesis to look at the Philippine context and translating that into, well, getting something in an international project and trying to translate it into the Philippine market to see if it's viable here. Additionally, I'm also into hydroponics. So if you're into, if you know agriculture or farming agriculture technology, I'm currently involved in a feasibility study to put up a hydroponics facility that is hopefully will change the way agriculture in the Philippines is also done. But more on that eventually in this call. Thank you.
Laurence, that's a lot already. You talk about the bricks and also the hydroponics and agricultural industry, and we want to have more of those sustainability solutions here in the Philippines, because right now probably it's more in the developed countries, but I think we can also do something here in the Philippines. So thank you. So now let me proceed to my first question, which is directed to both of our panelists. So for some of you of our live stream audience, who might be curious about this topic, but has a little idea about it, could you perhaps expound what a sustainable community really means? So probably we could start with you, Danny.
Okay, yeah. So this is kind of a pretty big topic, especially for us. So I think sustainable communities, they kind of get the misconception that they're solely green practices, which is a huge part of it. But in reality, sustainable communities is basically having a community being able to thrive on itself and not being so dependent on a lot of different sources like governments. So basically what I mean by that is a focus on social, economic, and environmental systems. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. So that could be, for example, property community designs, clean water, clean air pollution, having some kind of form of a sustainable government, proper waste management systems, and easy access to healthcare services as well as social services. So in a nutshell, it's really having a community working together and being able to sustain itself. And hopefully from having all of those different foundations and fundamentals, that community can itself keep on thriving. Hopefully that makes sense for you.
Actually, that makes sense a lot. I know that's right. Sustainable communities cannot work alone. There needs to be like help or like of different sectors. So I guess probably Laurence can expound more on it as well. And what you think is a sustainable community?
Yeah, thanks. So when we talk about sustainable community, in my definition, it would actually revolve more on the principles of a circular system or a circular economy. So what is a circular economy? Well, it's basically an economy or a system that focuses or aims to eliminate waste and pollution by regenerating it into a useful resource. So it's either you get the waste and you put it back in the system and makes the product again, so it runs in a circle, or you get the waste and you make it into byproduct and it becomes a raw material that is used for another system, who knows. So in a production line, the byproducts and the waste products are kind of taken and used as input as raw materials for another production line, which I actually have an example for that, but we could, as we go along. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's basically focusing on circular systems and a circular economy in order for the system to become sustainable.
Yeah, I think those are really good points you mentioned about work of the different functions as well as circular economy, because we know right now there's a lot of waste, and this is related to the other webinars that we have about different solutions to help have this upcycling, refilling, and also probably making use of the raw materials that you mentioned, Laurence, to make high value products. We do actually. So now let's move on actually to our next question. So our next question is, considering the current state of our country right now that we're facing the pandemic, can we still develop sustainable communities? Is it still possible? Probably you can start with you, Laurence.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think those two they don't really correlate directly, especially this pandemic. For example, you kind of see the increase of e-commerce coming about. I mean, people are buying things online due to the pandemic, since then nobody can really go around, everyone's in quarantine. People then want things to come to them. So specifically looking at food delivery services and small business ventures, I myself sell my own packs of ginger beer, for example. We make use of a lot of packaging products and a lot of packaging waste, which needs to kind of be sustainable in the sense that when people do throw out the packaging, it in a way comes back to becoming biodegradable or reusable, for it to not turn into additional waste or additional pollution. So with the rise of food businesses in the country, yeah, everything is delivered in packaging. Due to the rise of the demand, the call for a circular economy, and I'm going to talk about this term a lot, the call for a circular system is even more than needed or necessary now, just because of the demand and the volume of these orders coming about and being delivered from household to household. So a friend of mine actually kind of is part of this company called EcoNest. I don't know if you've heard about it, but their main product is actually selling biodegradable packaging using raw materials, like for example, cassava bags to make, or in lieu of shopping bags, plastic shopping bags. So this product, or this invention, actually helps close the loop, if I would say, in the circular economy of food production line, and making it into, or eliminating rather, the waste that usually plastic containers and plastic bags tend to produce, which I think is, I would say, a very timely and innovative innovation nowadays, given the volume of increase.
I agree. So, all right, thank you so much for that, Laurence. Actually, I agree with the packaging, considering you mentioned about the e-commerce boom and what we do at AtoAni BioPack as well. Probably not cassava, but we're exploring like the use of sugarcane bagasse. This is an agro-industrial waste, and this is abundant in different areas as well. So create and packaging out of that, just to cut down on the waste that we produce in especially in the Philippines. I think we are one of the plastic producers country. Like I've heard like a statistic, 163 million sachets. So just imagine that's 1 year, and that is from the Philippines alone. So quite I know, that's a topic that we really need to talk about. So Danny, perhaps you can share as well in this area if it's still possible to build sustainable communities during this time.
Yeah, and this is actually something that Audeo is a huge advocate for. So we're like a huge believer that, especially during this pandemic, this is the perfect, although we've kind of seen all these, I guess you could see cracks in our communities, whether it be about the air pollution, the traffic, the high dense population, poor infrastructure, you know, like the list can go on. But being in this quarantine, we're kind of actually forced to have more time and also forced to think more on how we could create better initiatives to build sustainable communities and also help better equip our cities to fight this disease or fight COVID. So something to kind of consider, I actually like read this article, I forgot the name of it, but basically it was talking about the population. So for this year, it was predicted that the Philippines is going to have 1.8 million unplanned pregnancies, plus 751,000, all due to the pandemic. So kind of just thinking about that, I kind of like joke around, I call it the Corona boom, but just thinking about that, the population is going to continuously increase. And because of that, we need to start focusing on how we could, you know, build our communities to be more sustainable, not just now, but also in the future, 5, 10, even 30 years from here. So kind of like I kind of want to talk a little bit about some ideas or initiatives that we could kind of implement. And this is kind of what I've learned as I kept going. So some things are like hyper-local micro markets, and these are pretty cool where we have different food vendors. So think of a 16 square meter lot, something like that, where you actually have 3 different food vendors selling different produce, different types of meats, what have you. And you're actually able to put these in small sections. And it would be great if you could have this available, you know, rather than 2 days out of the week, you'd have it available 5 days out of the week. That way, if you have it in several different locations throughout the community, you're able to practice more social distancing. At the same time, you're able to support your local vendors. Something also to think about is something called 15 to 20 minute neighborhoods. So kind of like, think of an eco community. You know, you have your quality housing, either it being in condominiums or your regular residential houses. And around this, you're surrounded by, within a 15-minute, you know, walking distance, you're surrounded by ease of public transportation, your local markets, local businesses, even like hospitals or health clinics. Everything is in a pretty easy access for you. And that way it can also help with the whole traffic flow of things. And then kind of like talking more about it, one more thing is maybe like Laurence could also talk about it too, is really promoting agri-hoods. So this is really having development of urban agriculture. So I know Laurence is a huge advocate for hydroponics. So if we could create a successful hydroponic system within the urban areas, we're not only supporting more local farming or local agriculture, but you're having a more sustainable way of getting healthy vegetables, healthy fruits, things like that. So there's a lot of different components that come and to think about, but but that's all part of developing sustainable communities. There's a lot of solutions that you could put into it, and it's all about what you're really passionate about and what role can you play.
All right. Thank you so much, Danny. I think I like that 15 to 20-minute community that you mentioned, the idea, especially now that there are like restrictions in certain locations. And if you have those that are available within your locality, it would be really good. And agree with you on like helping the local farmers as well. So instead of, or the local vendors, instead of importing it, for example, for other countries, we can help our country, like in trees. And I think I'd also love that hydroponics that you mentioned about urban farming, because what we see right now are all buildings and also, the thinning, global warming. So I think it can really help support that. So since you mentioned already that it's possible to develop sustainable communities despite the pandemic, what does it take really to build a sustainable community? For the people in our audience who is interested to work in this area, probably that can include technicalities and also that can include mindset as well. And probably not all already. All right. We can probably start with Danny.
All right. Sorry, I was about to start, but I didn't put myself on unmute. Yeah, so if we're just to repeat the question, how can we build a sustainable community, especially if we're starting out, correct? So for me, because I'm also kind of new to this, it all kind of starts with educating yourself. And that means kind of like doing the research, but also being able to talk to different key players, whether that be urban planners, architects, people in the government, but people also who you may be interested. So if you're passionate about active mobility, so having bike lanes around EDSA, it's great. If you're really into sustainable communities and if you're passionate about that topic, go ahead and talk to a local organization or a nonprofit to see what it takes to build those biking communities. And then also a great thing is that something that we have to do is have, I guess you could say, the younger generation involved in this. So younger generation being like people our age, where we have professionals who could be mentors for us to teach how we could have these sustainable practices. But in reality, it's going to be up to us within even the next 5-10 years to really keep these practices going. So it's a perfect time to start learning and collaborate with organizations or other key players to promote more of these sustainable practices.
All right. So thank you so much, Danny. So Laurence, probably what does it take really to build a sustainable community, in your opinion?
Yeah, so in my opinion, sustainable communities, I would say, would lead into 2 points. So one would be innovation, and the second one would be education, which is what Danny mentioned a while ago. So remember, Danny did mention that the idea or the concept of a 15-minute community. So in AECOM, one of our lines of work is urban planning. We like to incorporate the mindset of sustainable communities in our plans when we plan developments, when we master plan cities, townships, more than ever now. And of course, when you talk about sustainability, that phrase is kind of thrown out everywhere. You hear it everywhere, but nobody really knows what will it actually mean or what does it actually take to implement what is a sustainable community. And the thing is, there's a lot of answers to it. And to answer that, going back to my definition, is one, innovation. You need to be able to be innovative in order for you to pinpoint institutional voids in your community. Going back to the packaging problem, the institutional void is how will you eliminate or rather reduce the number of waste that is increasing with this demand of packaging. And of course, the innovation there is sustainable packaging, biodegradable packaging. But also more on the innovation is in a circular economy, there's so many ways on how you could make a system even more circular. there's always going to be a way to innovate to make it better for the waste or the pollution to be reduced or to be used again. And that's where a lot of innovation is necessary. A lot of, I would say, different points of views, either if you're an engineer or if you're in financial, or I don't know, like whatever background you are, you can have a foot in this advocacy, in a contribution in a master plan. When you do master plan for 15-minute hubs, going back to that concept, a 15-minute township means that wherever you are, everything you need is already 15 minutes away from you. Either you're at home, you just go 15 minutes to the grocery store, you go to the bank, go to the mall, you even go to the recycling hub. It's like transportation plays a key factor in the master plan, but not just the transportation, but also the accessibility to these key nodes that is needed for a township or for a community to even thrive. Second would be education, of course. You need to educate the people who are on the ground, the ones who are actually doing the recycling, or the ones who are actually doing the production lines. Because, of course, you could have all these advocacies. You can talk to people all these as much as you want. But if you're not able to educate the ones who are really executing the work or throwing the waste, then it's just going to go for nothing. Like, nothing will really happen. It all boils down to creating a collective culture, creating a collective mindset in order for the whole community to actually be sustainable. And like I said, everyone plays a key role in this. And if we're able to educate everyone accordingly to what sustainable community is, like having these webinars, then that's going towards the right place in terms of creating this new mindset, this new belief system that would need to constantly be reminding the younger generation and the generations to come about this new mindset. Like, this basically becomes a new normal in terms of educating the people. Yeah, those are my views.
Actually, those are really good points. I love the part of collective, culture and the sense of the education and educating with targets, like who you will educate, because blind education probably would not really go further. And I totally agree with that too. Thank you so much for those. I hope their audience have learned a lot as well. So don't forget to put in your questions if you have questions. Probably I add more questions as well, not in the slides that I prepared to expound more on this topic. So now I'm curious, because we're talking about plastic packaging, and you mentioned, Laurence, about the e-commerce boom, and Danny is working on upcycling of plastic. So we put this question because I'll share the question first. Okay, so how can we address how can we address the plastic waste problem while developing sustainable communities? Because you mentioned that there's a circular economy and there's a lot of solutions into it. So probably you can expound more on this. Danny, can probably start with you.
Yeah. So again, it kind of goes back to educating yourself and educating the others who are all involved in this system. So kind of another like statistic to share that kind of like really puts things in perspective for at least me is that the Metro Manila produces about 8,600 tons per day. And what's crazy is that about 3/4 of that is all household waste, with 95% of it being reusable and recyclable, which is crazy because just knowing that means that as us individually, we could actually do a lot better in terms of practicing, zero waste, trying to reduce our, waste usage. But to kind of go more into the education part, especially here in the Philippines or even Metro Manila, is trying to improve our waste management system. So over here, from what I understand, all the LGUs kind of have their own type of responsibility. It's necessary to have material recovery facilities, so kind of like recycling facilities in a sense. But the thing about that is that although we have all of these systems available, there's not as many people who are knowledgeable on how to operate these facilities. So there has to be something implemented, or more help really, on how we could provide technical assistance for these facilities, as well as trying to build more landfills or some kind of other waste management systems. And kind of something that what we're doing, obviously, again, we're creating these houses that are made out of 90% upcycled plastic. So for kind of like just what Audeo is doing, for us to do that, we actually are trying to work directly with the landfills. So rather than trying to find a lot of different household, I guess, people who are getting plastics from the households, something that we're doing, if we're trying to go on a larger scale, is working directly with the landfills, so we could collect the plastic waste from there and immediately produce these bricks in order to create, to build more houses. So it kind of like what Laurence is saying, it kind of goes back into a circular economy, but kind of like a loop, circular loop. But yeah, that's kind of my summary for that.
Danny, for that. So Laurence can probably add more as well and expound on this particular question.
Yeah. So before I go into that, actually, you have to look first at plastic. What is the very nature of plastic? And the real problem is that there's so much plastic waste because the very nature of plastic is meant to be broken down after X amount of years. You know, you look at the life cycle of plastic, it doesn't biodegrade after 5 years. It takes how many years? I don't know, like a lot. Yet the current use of plastic, though, is we use it most of the time just for a few minutes or even for a few seconds, and then we throw it away. So the life cycle of the material is indirectly proportional to the amount of time it is being used for. So if you're able to meet the time that the plastic is used for its actual lifespan of its existence, it's like a person, you maximize its lifespan. You're actually reducing the chances of plastic becoming waste and pollution. For example, or maybe more of like a direct solution would be going back to the packaging. You're replacing plastics with eco-friendly packaging, because for packaging, generally, you only use packaging for only 5 seconds or a few minutes of your day, and you throw it away. So why not create a packaging in which when you throw it away, it also biodegrades easily, so you don't, so that you reduce the pollution. What about plastic? We can't just totally eliminate plastic, rather. And that is actually a perfect solution to that is the plastic bricks that Danny and Audeo is currently bringing here. Because if you look at the eco bricks, it's a perfect example because it rides along the wave of construction as a forever increasing demand. And when you do make a building is meant to be meant to stand for 100 years or longer. Am I right? So thus the amount or the timeline for that building to be used, therefore the timeline for that plastic to be used, is meeting its lifespan, if I were to say so. Maximizing its lifespan for optimal use in construction, rather, in this example. So if we can invent plastic to be reinvented, rather, to take it away from packaging and use it for a longer and more useful use, like construction, then thus you are also reducing the waste, the plastic waste that is being thrown out, and also you're maximizing the amount of time that you have, that the plastic is meant to, stay there or live, I would say. So yeah.
All right. I actually like that point. You mentioned about plastic being only used like 5 seconds and then you throw it away. Probably I've read a statistic, it takes 50 or so years. So just imagine times 10 or what. So I think I really agree with that idea. So I think in the future, when we think about products, let's think about as well, what is its effect in the environment if we did create it? Probably the inventor of plastic did not actually think that in mind. We can't always blame, because plastic has its good uses. We just need to know where do we use it so that it does not harm. Probably not in packaging, because it only takes a while to be able to use it. So now, This leads me to my next question because people perhaps from our audience or those who will watch it when we share it after this live stream, if what advice can you give to those who are just starting out developing sustainable communities, since you are working in these areas and probably can share more of your experience as well, like struggles, and probably they can learn from. All right, so Laurence, perhaps we can start with you.
Yeah, actually, it's not that difficult to start, I would say, because there are just so many problems that you could solve. There will never be a perfect system. I think so. There'd never be a perfect system, and therefore you can only constantly improve the system. And for people who want to start out, I mean, you can start out first by looking for, like I said, institutional voids in a circular economy or imperfections in the circular economy, that in which you can convert and invent solutions for that whole system to be sustainable. Um, yeah, so a few tips, of course, would be be aware for once. I mean, first, being aware, which is like going to a webinar like this to define what is a sustainable community at the first place. Try to educate yourself, try to be more proactive. Education is very important. You don't want to have a wrong definition of what sustainability is. So it's very important to be aware of what you're talking about also, and the reality of the situation. Number two would be to advocate. You already know you already know the facts. You already know the reality. Advocate it, fight for it. Tell people more about it. Keep the conversation going, because it's been going on for years, but it's not enough until now. It's still going on. There's still a lot of questions to be answered. How do we fully optimize the system? How do we reduce waste and all that stuff? It's constantly going on because there's so many problems to make a perfect system. Because it's only now, or rather, it's only been a few years when we've actually implemented these practices and these mindsets in the actual production lines. And of course, the third one would be practice what you preach. I mean, you don't want to just say, "Oh, recycle," but then you throw plastic waste like it's the end of July. It's the 4th of July. You want to be able to be an example for the people you're talking to, and also looking for constant solutions in order for you to reduce the problem that you're trying to solve as well. You don't want to add more problems for yourself, even if you're an advocate for sustainability. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Laurence. I think I would agree with that. Practice what you preach, because a lot of time you see people, they talk about this, but they don't really act on it. Like, I think it's really good to act on it and probably talk a little bit about it, but it's good to talk about it and then act on it, right? So Danny, can you perhaps give your advice to those people who wanted to start their building sustainable communities?
Yeah, and like to kind of add on to what Laurence said about educating yourself. Like one, education, knowledge is power, right? So as you gain more of this knowledge, you'll kind of start finding the niche or the something that you could be really passionate about, which I expressed this earlier, but again, if you're passionate about housing, agriculture, even the economics, so trying to increase jobs in your area, practicing active mobility or zero waste lifestyle, whatever it be, do everything that you can. One, educate yourself, talk to the organizations or people involved in that area, and be as active as possible. So what I mean by that is, I think a lot of times we kind of just let the responsibilities go to just the urban planners, architects, or even the government. And whenever something goes wrong, it's like, oh, we have terrible traffic. Oh, we have, leaking water, something like that. We always tend to blame someone else. We don't take on the responsibility. But I believe as us being community members or citizens, it's kind of important for us to have some kind of role in creating more of your sustainable community, because you want to live somewhere that you want to live, right? And kind of also to maybe promote Audeo, I guess, is we have a platform. So we have a Facebook group that's called Audeo Sustainable Communities Platform. So essentially, if you're really passionate about this, whether it be any of the topics I described, feel free to join it. And this is more of like sharing what you guys are doing, advocating your practices, or even if you just want to learn more on how you could get involved. This is like a great platform for you to connect and network with other people and again, learn those different practices. Something that we're also doing, we have something called the Audeo Coalition. So what this is getting a lot of different key players or professionals, whether that be urban planners, architects, people, investors in the social impact area, a lot of nonprofits. We're basically getting a lot of these different experts involved in order to create some kind of sustainable community project. So this kind of goes back to kind of like the 15-minute neighborhoods we're talking about. So trying to build the foundation where it could be the house, and then building an ecosystem around that. So having that, that access to public transportation, ease of access to healthcare, social services, everything that you need is in close by. And that way, it not only helps the economy, but it also helps, I think, mentally, also the families living there. So yeah, that's my huge advice that I could give.
Okay, thank you so much, Danny. I would totally agree with that. I'm part of the Danny's community for sustainable communities for Audeo, and I think there are a lot of people in there who, if you're interested, to help build the sustainable communities, do be part of that group. Okay, so now I think this is the part where we asked our audience if they have some questions. Okay, but actually there's no questions, but there's a comment. I'd just like to share this comment from Cheryl Marie Cipriano. So she mentioned that it's good to see young people so aware about SD, so young people. If we get to have more people like you, then it's something to really look forward to. So we need to practice SD now as our way of contributing towards the attainment of sustainable communities. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for that. I would agree. I think it should start with the youth, for instance, and then we can influence the others as well from this one. So again, if you have questions, please do put it in the comment sections, or even if we could not answer them because you put it a little later or you rewatch us as a replay, probably we can look into the comment section as well during the next times. All right. So right now, I would like to ask the different our panelists if they have any last points that they want our audience, to know, and how they can possibly connect with you and follow you in your respective advocacies. Probably we can start with Danny of Audeo.
Yeah, so over here I'll see my contact information. If you guys have any questions or just like really passionate about sustainable communities and especially housing or affordable housing in particular, feel free to email me at audeoph@gmail.com. Up there, you see our Facebook page as well as the Facebook group. And advice that I could, like just some last minute advice that I could give is really, really take action. Like not just educate yourselves, but really like what Lauren said, practice what you preach. And if something is very important for you, do whatever you can to help with that, because that's not only going to help you or your family, but it's going to help your entire community surrounding that area.
Thank you so much, Danny. And now I'd like to call on Laurence. Any last points you want our audience to know and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, well, I don't have anything to really promote. I think the reason why I like these kinds of conversations is rather to keep the conversation going. That's the advocacy that I would like to promote accordingly, especially when we talk about sustainable development or even just circular economies and how to keep that mindset and advocacy going. So right now, I think what I'm trying to promote basically is this conversation, the mindset and of either the collective culture, rather developing the collective culture in order for it to grow even more, for it to become a larger message for people who haven't really heard of it. I don't know who else hasn't heard of it by now. But if we're able to keep the conversation going, then therefore We're able to also educate the youth. We're also able to even get it up to the higher ups, hopefully. But really just letting that advocacy not die down, especially now that it's needed more than ever, so that we could see this problem getting reduced and seeing an improvement in terms of how we recycle waste or how we even plan cities and how we replan our cities even. So yeah, if you need to contact me, if you have any questions also, then my emails are on the slide right there. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Laurence. And that's so noble of you to actually share your expertise, even with the last minute, invite that we have. And thank you as well, Danny, for inviting Laurence. Thank you so much for being very generous with sharing us your experience and expertise as well about building sustainable communities, which is what you do. And I've learned a lot. Our audience, I believe, have learned a lot as well and pick up some good points and how they can start their own sustainable communities in their respective areas. Because I like the idea about collective culture. Okay, so if we can, like, one at a time, we can have more people aware about these things and they can collectively take action. So once again, thank you so much, Danny and Laurence, for spending your time with us for today's webinar. So with that, before we end, we'd like to call on Jonna from AtoAni BioPack to share to us about AtoAni BioPack's advocacy and how you can take part. And just like our guest panel for today, share your knowledge as well to spread awareness and be part of our next batch of panelists. Jonna?
Hello, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Jonna. My background is in industrial engineering, but I am passionate about sustainability as well. With this, I currently lead the partner collaborations function of AtoAni BioPack and product development function of AtoAni. In previous webinar, we have shown these statistics for plastic waste in the Philippines. It's about 163 million sachets, of which our guest panelists today from Audeo and AECOM is also trying to address. In addition to that, we have over 6,900 tons of bagasse that is wasted daily. And for those who are new to these webinars, you might think, why am I showing you these seemingly unrelated statistics? But these are the problems that we are trying to address at the AtoAni BioPack. So we make use of agro-industrial waste, such as bagasse, to serve as a raw material in making sustainable biodegradable packaging to help reduce reliance on plastics. So with this, in our own little way, we hope to spread awareness not only about sustainable packaging, but also about zero waste and sustainability practices, as what you have learned now about sustainable communities and other sustainable solutions as well, which we will showcase in our next webinar episodes. So with that, to anyone who wants to take part of this awareness, advocacy, and share their knowledge, social enterprises, zero waste shops, manufacturers, and zero waste sustainability advocates, we would love to connect with you. So we are also looking for our next batch of panelists to learn from. If you are interested to become a panelist in one of our webinar episodes or become one of our webinar moderators, just like Harmony, who moderated our previous webinar, so please feel free to send us a message on our Facebook page. That's AtoAni BioPack, or Instagram at AtoAni_BioPack, or you can join our community of advocates through our Facebook group AtoAni X Sustainable Packaging Advocates, where we organize webinars such as this, community online events, collaborations, discussions, as well as share first-hand speaker and moderator opportunities.
All right. Apparently, I was on mute the whole time. So I'm gonna say it again, what I mentioned. So again, if you're interested to know more, as a call to action, we encourage everyone to learn and advocate for sustainability to the people around us by not only joining this webinar and also sharing it as well, at the same time taking action. So as mentioned by Laurence a while ago, collective action is really important because we could not do this alone. And I think I remember like a point shared by our previous webinar panelists that you don't need to have a perfect solution yet. You just need imperfect solutions that are done by a lot of people. And then you can create really good impact. So if you want to know more about sustainability topics, do watch it in this Facebook live streams at AtoAni BioPack's Facebook page for topics about zero waste and sustainability, and for agriculture, AtoAni PH, where this would be organized by the interns we will have in the next few weeks. So we will also have upcoming webinars in August, another one at the end of August, and one in September before we move on with AtoAni feature series as well. So as mentioned, don't miss our next webinar on August 22, same time, where we will be joined by our panelist, Sir Erwin, who is a social innovation consultant and mentor, and Mark, who is the chief builder of My 2030 Field SDG Advocate. So also, we will have a guest moderator, Maya, who is a zero waste advocate, a former Trek secretary. So I joined Trek Trails to Empower Kids. This is like go into the mountains and help the indigenous students in there. And she is also a volunteer. So here they will be talking about how we can enable mindset change and sustainability awareness, because we talk a lot about the solutions, but what about mindset change? I think it's really a good topic. And if you're interested, please do join us next time again, same time next Saturday. So with that, I would like to officially close this webinar. I hope you have learned something out from the discussion. Thank you for tuning in. See you next Saturday, same time, 6 to 7 p.m. and have a good night, everyone. Bye.